have one more question for you, Eric, because you've traveled, you've been in the industry for a long time. What would you say the most memorable moment in your career so far in broadcasting, or even as a fan,
Yeah.
a special moment?
It's honestly, Vince, it's tough to give you just one because I've been fortunate enough and lucky enough to have many. So I'll try and cut it down to just two. And one I think is obvious, and that is the Raptors winning the championship. And to know that, selfishly speaking, even I had a chance to be a part of history. I was calling the game on the radio. So as much as it would have been amazing to be a part of the television broadcast and to do the post-game interview and to be on the floor, with the ticker tape falling on me and all the confetti coming down and interviewing players in the moment, whatever, that would have been incredible. Trust me, it was just as amazing to be calling the game on the radio and to know that, when you listen back to the Raptors winning the championship, whether it's their only championship or whether it's their first championship of 3, 5, 10, whatever it may be one day, my voice, my call will be part of history. So that's a thrill for me as a fan, let alone as a broadcaster, to know that I own that little piece of history. It's kind of just cool to think of it still, and to know that even in that moment, like, because I call the games for the team and we're team broadcasters, we're considered part of the travel party, the team, the group of people. And the reason I say that is we were very fortunate to be invited into the locker room about 90 minutes after the game and after the kind of champagne shower has sort of, well, maybe not ended, but quieted down. And, I had my picture taken with the trophy like less than 2 hours after the championship, and my, suit is soaked in champagne, and I fulfilled my work commitments and everything. But there I am holding the trophy and posing for the, pictures by myself, and then with Jonesy, and then with other members of our broadcast crew. And then Kyle Lowry jumps into a picture and all that. And then even months later, I had an opportunity to have the trophy for a day and to be able to show it to friends and family and to have it in my home and whatnot. So it was very, very, very cool to know that, even if I were to die tomorrow, and knock on wood, hopefully I don't, but that I had that moment in my life, let alone in my career. But the other one, crazy as it may be, even though I've had a career in sports, and I told you I never wanted to cover news, the attacks on the Twin Towers on September 11th, I was at that time in my life and in my career hosting the evening talk show on Fan 590. Myself and Bill Hayes, we were on Monday to Friday, 7 to 11. And so I was on the air on September 11th, the day of the attacks. And I sat at home and watched everything unfold over the course of the day. And then knew that I had to go on the air live that evening. And it was difficult, to say the least, let alone just mind-numbing to try and figure out what you're going to say and how you were going to say it, and how you were going to suddenly, transition from a career and a life in sports to suddenly talking about such a serious issue and such a dramatic event, and all of the feelings and thoughts that people had. And honestly, at the time, wondering, are we on the brink of World War III? There's conversations about whether, what is the U.S.'s reaction going to be? What's the retaliation going to be? How important will Canada play a role in all this? Is there going to be a draft if we go to war? All this stuff. These were topics and these were discussions that were going on. And to suddenly switch from sports to that, not only for that day, Vince, that evening, we became a news station or just a event station and just a cultural station or just an outlet for people to vent and to talk for at least 2 weeks, if not 3 weeks. Like, we started to get into some stories that had sports angles to them as it relates to when will we be back playing? How amazing was that moment when the Mets and the Yankees got onto the field in the Subway Series in the midst of all this and sort of rejuvenated a community just because they were able to play that game, and to see the FDNY and the NYPD and all the first responders on the field and all that. Like, you found sports angles, but for a while, we weren't talking sports. We were just talking issues as it related to it. And that night, like that first night on September 11th, we had on the former head of the Transit Commission in New York City, who was actually friends with the father of one of the producers at our station. So that in itself was incredible to hear about the infrastructure that would have existed and everything. But then I'll tell you the other thing was we spoke to a survivor that night, like on the day of. And again, this guy was working in Tower 2. I don't honestly remember what floor. I want to say it was in the high 20s or low 30s. He was in Tower 2, and he, man, I'm trying to remember 20 years later the details because I don't want to misrepresent here. He knew that Tower 1 had gone down, and he was in the staircase trying to get out of Tower 2. He got out of Tower 2 and was okay. But the problem at the time was all of the cell phone lines, all communication within the city was jammed. Like nobody was able to make phone calls especially into the city. And if you got a signal, it was like rare, few and far between. So one of the producers at the station knew this guy, again, through his father, said, I know person X. See if you can contact him. We don't know if he got out. Keep calling the number, keep calling the number. I had the home number and I had the cell number. So I and my producer and Bill Hayes, we kept calling. And we finally got him on his cell phone. He picked up and he didn't know who the hell I was. And I explained the connection and how we got his number and spoke to him. And he was at like a coffee shop. He didn't know where he was going, where to go next, how to get home, whatever else. But he said, can you call my wife and tell her I'm okay? I can't get through to her. And I said, well, I've been trying. I can't get in either. But he's like, please try. So I called and kept calling. And ultimately the house phone rang. And the woman picked up and thought, just like immediately was shouting out her husband's name. And I said, no, it's actually Eric Smith. I'm calling from a radio station in Toronto. And she's crying and completely, obviously, understandably, completely bewildered. And as I calmed her down and tried to explain the situation, I told her that I've spoken to your husband and he's alive. He survived. And he wanted me to call you. And he wanted me to that he's alive and that he's trying to find his way home. And she's clearly, completely beside herself and starts bawling again and is just sort of sideways on the phone with me. The fear and the pain, and then suddenly the exuberance and the relief of knowing that he was alive, and then still trying to process who in the hell I actually am and why I'm calling. So that moment, and then to reconnect with the man a couple of hours later and to do the live interview and to hear him recount his day and his story of getting out of the tower and living through it. That to me, right up until the championship for the Raptors, was the number one moment. So as much as I've been able to cover sports and talk to some of the greatest athletes and interview some of the greatest athletes and experience games and live games and whatever else, at the end of the day, even though I never wanted to get into news, that was the top moment because it was just such a life-changing experience to live through that day, to live through those shows, but then even as I said, just that moment specifically and those conversations specifically with those people, that kind of to this day still stands out more than anything else.